I'm Julie Mason. It's great to welcome back Ambassador John Bolton. He served as Assistant to the President and National Security Advisor from April 2018 to September 2019. I hope you're well, Ambassador.
I'm doing fine. Looking forward to tomorrow.
With mixed feelings or just excited for it?
Just hoping it will go peacefully and be over quickly.
Well, it feels like something's building in this country, doesn't it, with the news that the Proud Boys have gotten back together and Trump's rhetoric about how this election is already being stolen from him. It seems like, I'm in no way courting danger, but it feels a bit volatile.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, if Trump knew anything about Texas, he would understand the meaning of what they say in Texas when they say somebody is all hat and no cattle. And I think that really is a good description. Obviously, if there is any violence, I think the people ought to be prosecuted fully. We shouldn't tolerate it. We've got to break the fever. And the only way to do it is to try and go forward and have peaceful elections. I think in most of the country that is going to happen. Maybe in the swing states it'll be more problematic, but I think people are ready for it this time. And most importantly of all, Trump's not sitting in the Oval Office this election. He's going to be by the swimming pool at Mar-a-Lago. It's a very different circumstance.
Right. He doesn't have the same kind of levers that he was able to pull in 2020, 2021.
Right, and I think people know that if we're down to this again, he's a fading phenomenon. I'm not trying to underestimate the threat. I'm just trying to get it accurately. I think a lot of people, a lot of Republicans especially, are going to vote for Trump with gritted teeth. And they're not going to tolerate what we saw in 2020. I think the mood of the country is shifting in multiple directions, but I think the taste for violence for the overwhelming majority of people is just not there.
Yeah, interesting. I hope you're right about that. What do you think about the campaign that Kamala Harris has run?
Well, I think it's been probably as well as she could do given the short time that she had. I think the bigger problem for the Democrats is not so much her campaign as it is their failure in 2023 to recognize that Biden's age was going to be a problem and to deal with it then. Instead, they dealt with it when there was no possible way to hide it anymore and where it really wasn't possible for them to have a contested nomination. It doesn't bother me that they went immediately to Kamala Harris, but from their own perspective, they gave up the chance to pick the person who could be their best nominee, and they had no choice but to go to Harris. So if they lose, certainly one factor will be their reluctance, their unwillingness, their inability to change Biden out over a year ago.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what have you thought about the two candidates' rhetoric on national security and foreign affairs? They have talked about it a fair amount.
Well, I think Trump is doing the same thing he always does. He doesn't have a philosophy on national security or anything else. He doesn't follow policy as we understand that term. He's repeated a lot of positions he's taken in the past. I think his presidency would be potentially catastrophic for the United States if he withdrew from NATO. Harris, I think, will be a pale imitation of Biden, which I don't think is great either, obviously. But it's not at all clear she's thought comprehensively about national security other than to try and adhere to Biden's positions.
I wonder how much of it she's actually been exposed to. It's hard to get a read on that.
Well, I will say this about the Biden administration. They have leaked very little. I mean, compared to any normal administration, not Trump, which leaked much worse than others. But what people tell me, what I've seen, is that in National Security Council meetings, she certainly asked a lot of questions. As a former prosecutor, that's a skill that she should have, but it was rare to see what her actual views were. And while I can commend the Biden team for not leaking, it's also an indication maybe she doesn't have very firm or fixed views. And I think perhaps you'll have to display it under fire. It's a tough place to have to do on-the-job training, though.
Yeah, for sure. Ambassador, in this cycle, we've seen Russia, China, now Iran, and their attempts to influence the race, including allegedly hacking the Trump campaign. How effective do you think that's been in dividing America and sort of stirring everyone up?
Right. I'd add North Korea in there, too. I mean, I think it's not so much a case of Putin wanting Trump because he thinks he can take advantage of him, and Russian efforts designed to help Trump, or Iran that definitely doesn't want Trump and has had efforts to try and diminish his candidacy. It's the lack of confidence in our institutions, the fear that we're being manipulated, and we're losing the sense of civil society. That's as destructive or more destructive than foreign efforts on behalf of individual candidates. You know, we don't know what successes we've had against these foreign efforts because obviously they've got to be kept quiet, particularly in terms of offensive cyber operations. But my belief is that from the FBI to the intelligence community, there's a lot of activity going on, and I hope it's successful. We've got to talk about this more fully after the election, when Trump disappears from the scene and his unwillingness to confront that reality hopefully disappears with it, and see what more we may need to do to protect the integrity of our own institutions.
Relatedly, Ambassador, what do you make of Russia now using North Korean troops in Ukraine?
I think it's a demonstration of why, considering American national security, whether it's in a campaign or after the campaign, you can't take the view that we can withdraw from the world and expect things to turn out okay. Nor can you say, as some people like Vice Presidential nominee Vance say, let's reduce our concern about Europe, let's reduce our concern about the Middle East. The real threat is China and along the Chinese periphery, and that's what we should worry about. The fact is the China-Russia axis still in formation, demonstrated in part by one of their principal outriders, North Korea, now putting troops in Europe, perhaps in combat within a matter of days. The Chinese threat is a broader threat than just in Asia. It's a combined threat with Iran in the Middle East, with Russia in Europe, and we have to deal with it that way. This is not the time for isolationism. This is the time for a strong American posture in the world to deter our adversaries and protect our interest without increasing the chance of war. This is real proof, I think, of the saying that it's not American strength that's provocative, it's American weakness that's provocative.
Do you think that China's ambitions have been hobbled at all by their bad economy?
Well, I think they appreciate that their economy is in trouble. They see it. They obviously don't talk about it publicly. And they've made some decisions in terms of re-centralizing control over the economy that they understand will result in lower economic growth. They want that to maintain political control. But they've also got a severe demographic problem as their population has reached its peak and is starting to go down. Inevitably, that will mean a weaker military capability. So I think the Chinese threat is most acute in the near term, and by that I mean 20 years. May not seem so near term, but in historical perspective, it's a short-term threat. We are not in the position we ought to be in terms of our defense capabilities. We need a significant increase in defense spending. If you're a deficit hawk like me, that means reducing domestic spending. Politicians hate to say that, but that's the situation we're in. That's what will confront the next president.
Ambassador John Bolton was Assistant to the President and National Security Advisor from 2018 to 2019. Ambassador, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Glad to do it.
I'm Julie Mason. This is SiriusXM.